of all the ones that they had abducted. So that's what happened, and that started the 60-some years that the United States and the aliens have been in cahoots. And God knows what they've developed.
Yes, absolutely.
It's all been underground, and it's all been secret, and they've funded it mainly with drug money, heroin and cocaine, and they have a $2.5 trillion budget every year for this secret outfit. So it's been absolutely an eye-opener to find these things out.
Yes. And this is what's so difficult for people to take on board, because, you just do not hear this, in mainstream dialogue. They're just they are not talking. Don't. And any time anyone of any substance does try to bring any of these subjects up, they're quickly dismissed. The individual is basically seen as a lunatic and someone who's talking absolute nonsense. When the truth is, there are so many now military men coming forward talking about their experiences. I'll give you an example as well from our side here, Anne. I was watching the BBC Breakfast News last summer, and there was a gentleman on the show, on the breakfast show, and he had worked with our MOD, the Military of Defence here in the UK, and he was talking about the experiences that the British government have had with ETs and ET contact. And there are a certain number of files that, this was last year, but there were a certain amount of files that were being released into the mainstream, into the public. And basically, he just sat there and said, we've had contact. They look just like us. And, some of us are now trying to get the information out. And the presenters were just looking at him, just spellbound. I mean, it was too much for them to take.
I just love England because you've got all the crop circles over there.
And that's been going on for centuries, hasn't it, the crop circles? It's not really new.
Yes, and the aliens love it over there. Yeah. And then there was the big Bentwaters case over there. I think that I think the aliens love the British too, because you do have a lot of activity over there.
We do, yeah.
And there are underground bases even in England that people don't know about. We've got them in Dulce, New Mexico. We've got Area 51 in Nevada, and we've also got them in Australia.
That's Pine Gap, isn't it?
Pine Gap, yes.
I've heard that that's a retreat. Is that true?
Yes, R&R retreat, I think
R&R,
it is.
Yes,
where
that's
they
what
can
Bob
go
Dean
and
says.
have a vacation, right?
It's so funny. So, okay, so we've touched on briefly on the work of Dr. Hynek, and it must have been an amazing time for you. You must have seen so many files, so much information coming through your fingertips, and so many different characters as well. So let's just move along slightly. So now let's go into your experience that you had. There's one question I did want to ask you about before we move on,
sure.
And that's the Majestic 12, because I believe you came across some information about them, didn't you, while you were working in his office?
Yes, I did. I saw a list of the names of MJ-12 in the files, and it's just amazing. There were so many of them that were top security people in the United States. These were the top military, top secret people. And, one thing we have to keep in mind is that above the President of the United States, there's about 27 levels of top secret.
That's right, yes.
So, the President doesn't know everything, and that was the whole Kennedy situation. He got wind of all of this alien stuff. So he demanded the files, and he was planning on bringing it to the attention of the general public, and that's why he was assassinated.
Yes.
And he was assassinated by a member of MJ-12.
Yes.
So, these people, these guys were just incredible, and they it was President Truman, that organized them first, and the purpose was to find out just what this alien agenda was all about.
Mm-hmm.
But then from then on, it just became more secret and more secret, and they just ran the whole show with the aliens then at that point.
Yeah. And Dr. Hynek was moving in some very high circles, obviously. I mean, did you ever feel that he feared for his life? I mean, I know, have you ever heard of Professor James McCanney? He's a scientist. He currently does a show called The Science Hour, and I believe he's a former astronomer as well. And he talks about, how manipulated the scientific community is, and how they keep the highest level scientists quiet. They pay them off, they bribe them, they blackmail them, anything that you can think of they do. Do you feel, or do you know if Dr. Hynek had any of those kinds of experiences? Do you think he was afraid for his life at any time?
He never told me of anything specifically, but I have the distinct feeling that he was very concerned for his life and the life of his family. And he knew that he had to toe the line or there were going to be consequences. So that's why he didn't speak out very much.
Yes.
He kept everything very close to his chest because he was there in the middle of all of it. He was the man, and I knew he was having alien experiences.
He must have had, yes.
I knew they wouldn't leave him alone because
right.
he was the guy. And I kept after him and kept saying, "Come on, tell me what's happening. Tell me what you know." And he wouldn't. He just would not say it. So the last time I visited him, just before he died, he looked at me very intently, and he said, "I want you to know I've had my own UFO experience."
Okay, right, yes.
So that was...
so you let that one out just before you left.
I felt that was his parting gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, he was... there was a certain concern that he had, that he needed to toe the line, and this is what they've done with the astronauts,
yes,
the scientists, with anybody that knows anything. They've threatened them within an inch of their life, and if that wasn't, keeping people in line, then they would threaten the families. And usually when your loved ones are threatened, then you're willing to do anything.
I mean, I can corroborate that. I have an uncle who was is a scientist still, but he's no longer practicing in the scientific community. But he was recruited from this country to work abroad in America at Monsanto. And he worked in top secret, he basically worked within a top secret type program, and he never spoke about what he was doing. And only recently he's been coming out with things to the family about what he actually did, and we're finding out that he's one of the forerunners of stem cell research, and for all these years he's kept it quiet.
Kept it quiet.
Yeah. And that's what I always remember that growing up. My mother saying he can't speak about his work. We're not allowed to ask him any questions. And
usually it comes out when they know they're going to die. Then they'll tell it all. And this is what Ben Rich did. He was the CEO of Lockheed and Lockheed Skunk Works, and he was the one that said, "We have a complete interstellar fleet. There are only two kinds of UFOs, the kind that the aliens make and the kind that we make."
Yes, yeah.
And so a lot of it. And then he also, one of his engineers also came forward and talked about the handheld scanner that they have that was alien technology, and you could you scan the body with it, and you could diagnose the disease, you could treat it, and you could cure it. Mm-hmm. We've had a cure for cancer for so many years.
Well, I have my own opinions about cancer as well, because it always seems like so many high-profile people get it at inconvenient times. I mean, Dr. Hynek died from cancer, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yeah, he was summoned over to Edwards Air Force Base shortly after I went to work for him, and it was a secret mission. He didn't speak about it at all. He was there for the weekend and came back, and it was shortly after that he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. And all of us there in the office had a suspicion that it might have been induced. But they have ways of knocking people off.
No, I absolutely believe it. Yes, yeah.
And making it look very natural.
Natural. I mean, because I'm not sure if you're aware of Rene Rousseau. He was a film director, and he had produced a movie called From Fascism to Freedom, and it was circulated on the internet, and it was free. And I think within a year of that movie coming out, he was dead with cancer.
Yep.
So, you know.
Do you know Dr. Stephen Greer?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, his partner in crime, the woman that did a lot of research with him from Colorado, was given breast cancer, and she died of it. Yeah. They gave him melanoma, but he was a doctor, and he caught it in time.
Right.
So, yeah. They don't rest.
No, never stops. So, so we've covered Dr. Alan Hynek, who's an absolutely fascinating character. We could probably speak about him all evening, but I do want to move along because I really want to make some time for our discussion about Planet X, and also about this new shift in consciousness that's coming as well. I wanted you to just go through that story you were about to say before I moved you along about the ETs that visited you, the female energy that came to you.
Yes. Well, I went to this conference for Dr. Hynek in Wyoming, and I was there for 4 days, and strange and psychic and unusual things were happening throughout the 4 days. But there was a ranch outside the town there of Laramie that had a history of having a lot of UFO sightings, and a story that the man, Pat McGuire, who owned the farm, was trying to drill for water, and he couldn't find water anyplace. He had brought in all kinds of companies and people to drill for it and couldn't find any water. And one day, a spacecraft landed on his property. The aliens got out, and they showed him where to drill for water. And he did, and he's had water ever since. So there's this story, and it's out there, and it's built over these ley lines. And there seems to be a window there for spacecraft to come through from another dimension. So at the conference, everybody was going out there and having experiences, and I said, well, I have to get out there. Well, to make a long story short, a couple that were helping to arrange the conference said, if you stay an extra day, we'll take you out to the ranch. So I did. We went out to the ranch, and just from the moment we stepped on the land, strange things began to happen. And finally, at one point, I was hit in the center of my forehead at the third eye with this beam of light and energy, and the energy became so intense. The light, when it first started, was pink, but then it became extremely white, just a bright, bright white, and it felt as though somebody was jamming a steel rod down the back of my neck and out my tailbone, down my spine. I was cramping. The pain was absolutely excruciating, and I was literally being forced to the ground.
Right.
And I finally, when it was over, this white light just exploded inside my head like the 4th of July sparklers. And I ended up in a heap on the ground. And I had a terrible cramp in my leg and didn't think I could get up. Well, this couple was out there with me, but they had been doing something else, and they came running over and said, are you all right? And I looked up at them, and Connie said, my God, look at her eyes. And I have usually very blue eyes, but at that point they were bleached pure white. So I had two thoughts in my mind during that experience. One was, I'm going somewhere. I felt as though I was being lifted up off the ground. And I felt that Doug and Connie were way down there somewhere. And the second thought was, we're changing souls. And I thought, well, this is very strange. Anyway, it ends up that there's a huge lightning storm, a huge thunder and lightning and rain. We got about 25 feet and ran out of gas trying to get back to town. So there were three